Okay, it's 8:01 and everybody, I mean, all the board members are here and
Yeah.
quite a few others, which is great. So I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is the regular board meeting of the Kirkwood Meadows Public Utility District for Saturday, July 10th, 2021. It's 8 a.m. And Peter, may we have the roll call, please?
Sure. Rickert,
Here.
Epstein,
Here.
Schroeder,
Here.
Perot,
Here.
Dornbrook here.
Thank you. Eric, any announcements?
Just welcome everybody to the regularly scheduled board meeting and public hearing. If you would like to speak, please use the raise your hand function. I will be looking at the participant list so I can see who's raised their hand, and all votes will be by roll call.
Okay, thanks.
Can I suggest you explain one more time how to do the raise a hand in Zoom? Some people are still confused on that.
Sure. And I can't see it for mine since I'm the host, but if you go under reactions, there's a way there to raise the thing that says raise hand. It might be different on an Apple, Bob or Eric?
No, it's the same.
The same. Okay.
Yeah, so there's an icon that says reactions. When you open that up, there are a bunch of little icons, one of which is raise your hand. That's how you do it. Okay, are there any corrections to the agenda or consent calendar? Okay, if not, we'll move on to comments from the audience. If anybody would like to speak on a matter not on today's agenda, you're welcome to do that. Just raise your hand and Eric will call on you.
Not seeing any, Eric.
Not seeing any. I guess I can see a 2 in the gallery, I guess.
Oh, I do see one. Doug
Doug.
Minarotanda.
Yeah, Doug. Hi.
Hey there, how's it going? I had sent an email about wondering if we can get API access to our consumption data from the different utilities. Given all the rate changes and everything, it would be nice if we could be able to have easy access so we can track our usage and how it affects base rates, for example, and things like that in the future. So I was just wondering if that's something that the board could consider making available to the public.
Yeah, I hardly even know what that means. I mean, so I'd
Eric,
have to.
if I can comment, we calendared for the communications meeting for next week.
Great.
So we'll follow up.
Okay, great. Thanks, Bob. And you'll
Do
follow up.
you want an explanation?
No. I mean, API, I'm familiar with the term. I just don't really know what it means in practice. But Bob, the committee will follow up with Doug then after that?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks.
And we received that request from one other customer about a week ago through Rick.
Okay. Are there any other comments from the audience at this time?
I don't see any, Eric.
Okay. In that case, we'll go on. Written comments from the public. We did have that written comment from Doug. Of course, we've gotten a number of comments on the electric rates discussion, which are in our packets. Okay, so we'll move on to adoption of the consent calendar. And there are a number of items on the consent calendar. First is to approve the June 12th, 2021 regular minutes and June 28th, 2021 special minutes. Approve current consent for claims, review receivables and shutoffs report, appointment of Director Schroeder as treasurer, and appointment of Director Schroeder as finance committee chair. Is there a motion to adopt the consent calendar?
Yeah, Dornbrook, I move to adopt the consent calendar as displayed.
Thank you, Peter. Is there a second to that motion?
This is Epstein. I second.
Okay, roll call.
Rickert,
Aye.
Epstein,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Perot,
Aye.
Dornbrook, aye.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item 9, a public hearing, 9A. Proposed changes to electric rates and rate structure and possible adoption of ordinance 21-02, revising electric rates and rate structure. So the way I'd like to handle this is similar to the last time, but Eric, any review you want to make of the ordinance, the elements of the ordinance. I think we're familiar with them, but you may want to do an overview. The second thing I'd like to do, and this is a little different, is I'd like to ask board members to briefly state if there is a change to the ordinance that they would like to make, or that they would like to propose, and with just a very brief description of the change and the purpose of the change. This is so that when we turn this over to the public, they know what may be coming in our discussion, and they might be able to comment on it in advance. And after that, then we'll open up the public hearing to hear from the public. So Eric, and as before, as Eric is talking, if anyone who would like to speak would raise your hand so we know how many speakers there are and whether or not we have to put any limits on time. Hopefully that hasn't been the case so far. Hopefully it won't be the case now. But if you could do that, that'd be great. Okay, Eric, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Eric. So at the last board meeting on June 28th, the board voted unanimously to go with the 127.19 model. So I ran that model based on the direction that we received at that meeting. I did it in the same method as the others, which included how it impacted residential customers. And you can see the changes are the same, basically in the same wheelhouse as the prior ones, along with commercial. They're very similar to the prior ones as well. Sorry, the 122.19 I meant to say. Or 119.22. So that's the one we went with, but I did run all of them. So this is a scenario that we came up with at the last one. So you can see from the other comparisons of ones replacing the portion of property tax, there's some consistency, and very much so, between the impacts to customers. So
just to be clear,
I updated the ordinance to reflect the 3-year plus 2-year. I updated the ordinance to reflect the 10-year on net energy metering customers. And so that has all been updated as per board direction.
Okay, just to be clear, the rate structure right now is base rate of 119 and usage rate of 22 cents per kilowatt hour.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, now having that quick overview, I'd like to ask board members, are there any changes to the ordinance as drafted that you would like to propose today? Bertrand, I saw you raise your hand.
So at last meeting, we ended up with a compromise that I think was reaching toward everybody here. After that, Eric Christensen asked the valid question of, so what do we do for new constructions and new homeowners? Do we also extend to 5 years? And we had, I can speak for myself, we had very little time to think about it. And so we went ahead and applied this concept of 5 years to all situations. And that is actually, in my opinion, extremely detrimental to what we try to achieve here and short-sighted. So definitively, I would like to revise that section because it has major side effects that are detrimental. By asking basically that the rate will be revised for 5 years after a new construction or a new ownership, it basically frees people for 5 years, which is exactly the opposite of what everyone understood what was trying to do. So the justification for the current homeowners was to dilute the COVID year, which it does, but actually there are other solutions. So currently, basically, we would look at 2 extra years for current homeowners, but if we were not taking, like actually, I think there was an email sent by Reed Bennett in that direction. If we were only taking 2 years previous to the COVID year, plus 1 extra year the coming year, which is only from March 2021 to actually from April 2021 to March 2022, which is only 9 months away, we also would reduce the delay period that people can start making decisions and in shifting and electrification. So that to me was short-sighted, and I understand why we very probably out of exhaustion, most of us were not critical enough in the thinking at that time. And I think that need to be revised because it's really detrimental to what we try to achieve.
Okay.
So that's one point. The other point is there's still a lot of discussion on how this base rate need to be done. So the difficulty we have here, it's about 80% of the bill. Typically, base rate are independent of usage. It's difficult to do that when it's 80% of the bill. So, but nevertheless, people have come up with a lot of good suggestions that have not been looked at. And I really think we need to work harder and longer and better on assessing how this base fee is going to be done, because there are side effects in the current scheme. I could live with all the modifications we've made last meeting, plus this concern I have for the new owner and new constructions. I could certainly support the ordinance as it is, but for a transition period. I still think we need to do more work. I don't think this is the end of our discussion. So that's a qualification I'd like to make here.
Okay, Bertrand, thank you. Other board members, any amendments that you're going to propose before we open to the public? Well, I've got two. The first one is very similar to what Bertrand just said. I think that having thought about it, the 5 years and the extending for 2 years of uncertainty was probably not the smartest thing to do, the best thing to do. I would much prefer simply to eliminate at this point, eliminate the pandemic year and go with 3 years. It could either be the previous 3 years, there's 2017, 18, 18, 19, 19, 20, which I think is probably, as I've thought about it, is probably the better one, in my opinion, but I'm not sure. Interested in people's comments. The other option would be the previous 2 years plus the year we're currently in, which still leaves some measure of uncertainty and some delay, but open to discussion. So that's one amendment I would like to propose when the time comes. The other one is not yet an amendment, but I do think that if a household has significantly and sustainably reduced its electric use for whatever reason, that they should be able to request a reduction in their EDU. I don't know what significant means, and I don't know what sustained over a sustained period of time means. And I will be requesting that we agree that that will be tackled by staff in the finance committee and come back with a proposal no later than our October meeting. And so we can hopefully or possibly include such a provision. I don't have the answer yet. But in any case, those are the two that I would propose. Are there any others? Okay, if not, then I would like to open the public hearing. And as I said, if your hand is raised, I'll let Eric call on you.
Yeah, Howard's hand is raised.
Howard. Oh, you're on mute. Oh, there.
Yeah, I'm unmuted now.
And Howard, just before you start, just because a lot of people have come in since we gave the direction, under reactions on your toolbar for Zoom is the ability to raise your hand. So that's how you need to do it. Okay, Howard, you're up.
Okay, thank you very much, Eric. First of all, I want to reiterate my appreciation to the board and the staff for all the work they've put into this and trying to come up with a new system to meet the 6 objectives that were stated in the rate study. One of those was number 6, was to minimize the changes. And this whole EDU proposal does that. However, the number 2 goal was to fairly and equitably distribute the fixed costs. And what I've concluded after I looked at this more was you can't do both of those because the existing system is extremely inequitable. Charging everybody the same 66 cents per kilowatt hour that we do now is inconsistent with the rate schedules of virtually every other electric utility in the country. And most of those utilities are either regulated by a state public utility commission, or they're like ours, democratically elected utility districts. And the standard is to charge customers for their peak demand. And this rate structure with EDUs does not include that component. And right now, this is based in my discussions with other members of the community, some of whom live at Kirkwood full time. They have not been getting a fair deal. And they've been paying way too much for their electricity. And we need to go to a new system that is very different than the proposed EDU system. So I don't really care if there are any amendments to this system now, whether it's, I think instead with the, if this is adopted, it should be basically, as Bertrand suggested, just kind of an interim. And then by next July 1, we should have in place a more logical and equitable rate structure. And I sent the board members an analysis of some of the changes that would result with a more fair system. The numbers that I have in there, I'm not advocating for those, and I don't want to necessarily see nothing done, because just start charging a straight 66 cents per kilowatt hour is not fair. And in fairness to the board and staff, we inherited this rate structure. It wasn't right when it was Mountain Utilities. It wasn't right when it was the predecessor to Mountain Utilities, which the whole electric rates and everything just evolved out of the Kirkwood Mountain Resort owning a power system and selling what they called surplus power to the residents, not under the regulation of a state public utility commission. So if you look at the evolution, we got to where we are today, and we have to deal with that. But I would like to see the rates going forward to be much more consistent with the way it's done at virtually every other electric utility across the United States. And I'll be glad to entertain any questions on the email that I sent. But the way that I figure it, it's very likely that the chairlifts are being grossly undercharged for electricity. The wastewater and water utilities are being grossly overcharged for utilities right now. So that affects all of us. In other words, if we reduce the electric costs for the wastewater treatment plant and the water system, then that will result in reductions in the water and wastewater rates that we're all paying. So, and somewhat to my chagrin, when I ran the numbers, and I don't, you could do this many different ways, but it shows that I and most other weekenders, vacation rental owners, are grossly underpaying. So if there's one change that I would like, if you do go ahead, if the board goes ahead and implements the EDU system, there's one change I would like you to consider at this time. And that would be to have a minimum monthly charge for all meters, all accounts. And that should be at least $100 a month. I think 100 would be fair. I think $120 a month would be more fair. And with that, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Howard. Appreciate it. Other hands raised?
Can I ask a clarification? Was Howard's document in the packet?
Sure.
Yes.
It was a supplement.
The supplement, the second
Yeah, it was
supplement.
in the first packet, it was his first email, I believe, and then the second supplement that was sent Friday. Like it was almost at close of business around 4 o'clock. Bob, you should have got an email from Jess.
Is it in box?
No, she just sent it out as an email to everyone on the distribution list.
Thank you.
Have you
I'll
got?
forward it to you, Bob. And then
No, I think it should be in box. That's all I'm saying.
Ann Fleur has her hand up. Eric?
Okay, Ann Fleur, hi.
Good morning, everybody. I just wanted to echo what Howard just said. I also am really grateful for all the time and effort that has been put into this, and agree that making changes in this direction are really important to develop a fair rate, to spread out the costs of the debt that the PUD has and the fixed costs that they have to cover. But I'm really concerned about the way the EDUs are currently being calculated, and really urge you to take the time to make sure that that is being done in a fair way. I sent you all an email about that yesterday, so I'm sure you know where my thoughts stand on that, but I agree with what Howard said, and I said this in my email as well, that I don't know that we can accomplish not impacting people's monthly electrical rates and creating a fair rate if we're working on fixing a broken system. And so I think that that's an important thing to keep in mind as we're looking at these different variables. Thanks.
Ann Fleur. Others? Is that it for now, Eric?
I think that's it.
Well, we've gotten many written comments. I think we've all read them more than once, probably. I think we understand the concerns. Okay, so in that case, I'd like a motion to close the public hearing.
I think you need to close public comment, not the hearing.
Oh, I mean, excuse me, that's what I meant. Sorry, public comment, not the public hearing. May I have a motion?
Dornbrook, so moved.
Is there a second?
Yeah, Schroeder second.
Okay, roll call.
Rickert,
Aye.
Epstein,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Perot,
Aye.
Dornbrook, aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we'll bring it back to the board. Okay, so we have an ordinance in front of us. Bertrand and I have both expressed some desire to make a couple of changes, to make a change really. Because I think Bertrand, you started out talking about how we handle the AMU or the EDU calculation for new construction I don't know if I think you intended to extend that to all
Yeah.
customers.
So I think we need to keep it simple and similar for everybody. So I actually like Reed's suggestion of using the last two pre-COVID year plus the current year. I could, if it's a temporary system until we fix these issues for the balance, for the base fee, I meant. And I also think we have overlooked things like how do we make sure that undeveloped parcel or mid-construction parcel, abandoned construction parcel are actually paying their share. It's not part of that, and it should. I also like the idea of having a minimum fee like Howard push. Even actually already a few months ago, I proposed to pass a motion right away of having a 60 or 80 bucks minimum fee as a starter. So, and that's not at all in the ordinance. And I think
Bertrand, what was that? That was for everybody or for the partially constructed sites?
for everybody. I think clearly the biggest unfairness in the current system is that some people have an excellent, reliable grid supply, electricity supply, and they don't pay squat if they don't use electricity. So that's actually should be fixed yesterday. And it's simple, just put a minimum fee and everyone will pitch into paying the debt. And that's not in the ordinance. So Ian mentioned that at my introduction, but certainly I think that would go a long way to give us time to think and how can we make this EDU fair. I totally subscribe to the idea that you cannot fix a broken system without making changes. So some people benefit outrageously from the current system, and they will have to pay more. We cannot minimize that.
So we do have a minimum of, it amounts to about $60 a month. So
what do you mean?
Well, with 0.5 minimum is $60 a month.
Yeah, that's correct. In the current one, in the proposed ordinance, you have a minimum fee. That's correct, but it probably doesn't go as high as it should. But so back to the ordinance. So we could. I like the 2 + 1 year. So previous COVID 2 years plus the current one. It's only delay 9 months before people can make that change and for electrification. So I don't think that's a major hurdle. And
Bertrand, may I ask you why that versus just the previous 3 years?
I was going to say I'd be willing to go along with the previous 3 years as well for simplification. I prefer the 2 + 1 because since it's past usage and people were actually unaware, it would impact them for the current ordinance is designed to last for years. I really don't think that should be the case because we have a lot more work to do to make this system fair. So if it's a long-lasting ordinance, I want people to have a chance to impact how they use. I'll just give you an example for solar people, which is up to now, the concept was net metering. So it doesn't matter when you consume because at the end of every year, you get a true up that's going to balance what you produce versus what you consume. And that's what you will be charged for. Many of us already try to do the best to optimize, to match production with consumption by running consuming appliances during the sun time, but it was not in the radar of people. So I would like to give a chance people to adjust the way they do things so it has actually a little impact on the EDU. So that's why I would prefer it, yeah.
Okay, good, thanks. Let's just focus on the 3 versus 5 year thing for a moment. Do other board members have an opinion on 3 years versus the 5 that we had talked about previously, and on which 3 years?
Yeah, I've looked at every meter, and as you see some pretty dramatic changes from year to year, and probably the one that would be a good example would be snowmaking. And so if you took out the COVID year for snowmaking would be dramatically lower than if you left that year in there. And so I think when you're doing these averages, using the 5 years is going to smooth out more of those aberrations than 3 years. And then I'm not sure that the next year is going to be like a pre-COVID year. I was walking the neighborhood last night and met some neighbors, and they said, well, we're going to continue to work up here and stay up here about half our time. We liked it during COVID. We're going to keep doing that. So, everybody's heard about the new normal, and I think it's kind of a fact. So I think that supports considering not throwing out the COVID year, because it might not be as big of an anomaly as it seems. And going to 5 years smooths out the fluctuations from year to year. So those are some things to consider.
John, may I ask you a question, your thought? The 5 years with the 2 years of additional, do you have any concerns that delays anybody from shifting some things from propane or wood or whatever to electric?
Yeah, I think in the last board meeting, I said that 5 years we were sacrificing that goal a bit. On the other hand, there's been so much comment and thought around the fairness of generating the AMU EDU calculation that I think you have to pick which master are we going to serve? Is it going to be, more fairness is generating those EDUs, or is it going to be accelerating electrification?
Well, John, I am trying to wrap my mind around the fairness issue. I know we do things differently from PG&E and others, and probably SMUD, and I don't know. I mean, I've never done a survey of what other utilities do. I'm trying to understand why even the 66 cents that we currently have is not fair. I mean, I guess it has to do with some things require a lot more power to start up or something like that, and so there's a bigger demand. Some aspects of our customers have on this system than others. I'm trying to grapple. I mean, it may be a topic for the future, because I don't think we can put it in this ordinance, but I don't grasp the fairness issue quite as well as I think other people are grasping it.
I feel that, the fairness, it's part of it's philosophical. I think part of it would be comparing us to other public and IUDs as well. Our situation, I think, is dramatically different than most. I mean, the amount of debt that we've got on a pretty small ratepayer base is very high. So, one way you could look at fairness is if people have bought in here and they've been executing here for some period of time, if we change it dramatically, their net, what they're paying on a monthly or annual, I should say on an annual basis, that has an element of fairness to it, right? Like, I bought my house here. I knew what the electric rates were. Now I've been paying them for over, 12, 13 years. If my annual cost doesn't change too much, I might see that as fair. And if when Bob's run models and Eric has run models on doing it on square footage or capacity, we generate really large fluctuations. I mean, there's big winners and big losers. So I think we have to decide what exactly the question you're asking, which is what's fair. And I think I'd say not a huge change on an annual basis of cost is a good element of fairness.
Well, I think what I'm hearing is I may be completely wrong about this, but it seems like what I'm hearing is there's a fairness issue of full-time residents versus second homeowners, and there's a fairness issue associated with commercial versus residential. Whereas what the district has always done in all of its utilities is to the very best of its ability for any entity, regardless of full-time, part-time, commercial, residential, is basically pay for what you use. I mean, that has been kind of the philosophy from since I've been on the board, and I think since before I was on the board. So anyway, I understand that some people think commercial should pay more, and I think some people, people who live here full time for some reason should pay less than they do now. And maybe, I think it's all like you said, John. It's sort of philosophical. What's your philosophy about those things? Anyway,
So, Eric,
yeah,
I'd
Bob.
I'd like to offer some comments on
Sure.
this.
Sure.
So first off, if we just, I'm not proposing this, but if you just recalculate the EDUs every year based on usage, we'd have exactly what we currently have, with the difference being that more of your costs are in the base and less are in the usage. And we would do that shift, which has financial benefits and safety benefits. It would mean that a customer on a low snow year is paying more than they would have, and on a great snow year, they're paying less. I mean, that would be the net impact. So the issue is primarily, my mind, that we want to fix the EDU so you can use more and not pay a lot for it. The only thing I have seen in looking at every single customer's usage patterns is how many days they're here. If somebody is here a lot and then they shift to rarely being here for 5 years, then that's the major change. It's the number of days they're here more than anything else that influences. So we've done models looking at consumption based on residence days versus non whatever. It doesn't lead to any dramatic insight. It basically says that if on average you're here about the same every year, then this works out fine. If you dramatically shift from being here a lot to rarely being here, you're paying a lot more. So that's what I found. Now, let me comment on the demand charges, because I do not agree with what's been implied. First off, we needed to connect to the grid. We couldn't stay on diesel. If we only had houses here and no commercial, we couldn't possibly afford the cost. There's a minimum cost of connecting to the grid, and it was very expensive. It was $40 million. We couldn't even have afforded it if we didn't have commercial. Now, the other thing is, you could say, well, we would have put in a smaller line if it's only residential, but I don't believe that for a moment. If you're going to do something that long and complicated, you do it there's a minimum size you need to even make it practical. And that minimum size, what we designed for, which includes the future, we benefited by the fact that there were commercial customers as well as residential. The major change we've made here is a significant shift from residential to commercial. That's already in here. We did that by changing the EDU to be based on dwellings and not on everybody. That caused a significant shift from residential to commercial. So my feeling is that what we have done has made that shift. I think what we have is already fair. The open issue in my mind is what to do if somebody has a major shift in residency days and they're stuck with a higher number. And I can deal with that in a couple of years. But I think what we have come up with is equitable as it stands.
And Bob, the 3-year versus 5-year, and of 3 years, which 3 years?
Well, if you pick any 3 years, you're going to save a bunch of commercial customers a bunch of money. That's what you're doing.
But what would you favor? What do you
I
want
would
to
vote
do?
against 3 years under any situation.
You would go with the 5 years, including the 2 future years?
Yeah, or you could do 2 backwards.
No, I'm a little confused. So what would you like the ordinance to say?
What it is right now.
So you are okay with delaying possible transitions to electric for 2 years?
Well, first of all, I don't think people can react fast enough for 1 year. Yeah, it's disappointing, but that's where we are. That's where we are. I can live with that.
But what about the new construction? So why would they be stuck for 5 years? And same thing for new ownership, because the COVID is behind us. I don't think, why don't we have 2 years for those people if we stick with 5 for the current homeowners?
Do you want to propose that new construction be 3 years?
2 years, same. So everyone is on the playing field, that in 2 years from now, everything is set.
But what about construction after?
Okay, new construction will be 2 years. Okay, I think if we are fine with 2 extra years for our current homeowners, we should be fine for 2 extra years for new construction, new homeowners.
Well, I think a new homeowner in 2 years isn't getting an even comparison. So
Okay.
I wouldn't, yeah. I don't think
But
2 is enough.
5 seems to be way too long. It frees people for way too long. So I have a problem with that.
We could do 3 for new construction.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have a problem with that.
Well, I was walking around the neighborhood and 2 people at different times came up to me and said, when is the new rate going to be in effect? And what they're talking about is the 22 cents. And one said, I'm really eager to put in an induction stove or an induction range, replace my propane. The other one said, I'm really eager to bring my electric vehicle up and charge at home. And I said, well, it becomes effective if the ordinance passes on August 1st, except you're going to increase your costs over 2 years. I mean, it's going to be economically counterproductive for you to make those changes. And that's when I started thinking that 5 years really, I think, is a mistake. Now, I'd be happy with the 2 years plus the current year. I'd be happy with the previous 3 years. And I don't know. I mean, I didn't look at the data enough or don't have the data sufficiently to understand the shift from residential to commercial or commercial to residential. I mean, I haven't even been thinking about that really.
I agree with you, Eric. I think I prefer 2 + 1, but I could go along with the 3 previous years. But also I'm concerned that I was not provided access to the data. So it looks like John has it, Bob definitively has it. And I am not happy with that because I could have delved into the numbers as well, and I was not able to. Somehow I am never provided access so I can look at these numbers. And,
well, for me, it's not that so much as just what makes sense. I mean, to me, this whole effort has been to first better align fixed revenue with fixed costs and variable revenue with variable costs. Secondly, to change people's annual cost as little as possible in this change. And third, to allow people, if they want, to take advantage of a lower use rate so they can start to shift off of propane, wood, and gasoline to electricity, particularly if the electricity is 100% renewable. I mean, that to me is the thing. So it's not, to me, it's not a matter of, are we shifting from residential to commercial or commercial to residential? It's not any of that stuff. So to me, it's not looking at the data. It's just what makes sense. A lot of people have said we shouldn't include the pandemic year. Personally, I'm not sure. I think the pandemic year makes a difference for some people. Overall, I don't think it makes that much of a difference, but I'm certainly sensitive to the fact that it makes a difference to some people. So I would be happy to shift to the previous 3 years or just skip over the pandemic year and have one additional year. I don't understand the 5 year. The disadvantage of the 5 year is that people cannot start to shift. And there are people who are going to start shifting certain things right away, not heating systems, not whole big, make their house all electric, that's going to take a while, or if anybody ever does it. But I'm talking about charging their electric vehicles. I'm talking about cooking facilities, possibly water heating. And I just don't see the purpose of waiting 2 more years to let people do that.
Well, the thing that I think could support the 5 years is that we have pre-COVID, and we think that had some sort of consistency. Then we had COVID, and I think there are some that are definitely outliers, like the restaurants particularly, they didn't use any power. On the other hand, we don't know what the next 2 years are going to be like. Like, I don't really think they're going to be like the pre-COVID years exactly. So if you take 5 years and you get a few years of pre-COVID, you get the COVID year in there, because there are other meters that would benefit, snowmaking being a really good example. If you took that snowmaking year out, the COVID year, snowmaking had dropped dramatically. So the 5 years, you kind of get some of the traditional pre-COVID, you get the COVID year, and you get a couple of years of post-COVID. And it seems like it does have the negative effect of delaying electrification, but it has a positive effect if it smooths out those differences. And I think anybody, even to put an induction stove up here, I mean, if somebody knows a contractor that would come in and do that within the next year, give me their name and number, because I love those things. But, it takes a while to get something done up in Kirkwood. So I think, would any of these changes, would somebody get a car charger in or an induction stove within a year anyway? And so I like the smoothing effect, because there's been so much concern about the fairness of the EDU calculation.
Wow.
So Eric, the other thing I would say is usage depends on snow. That's the big factor. So you pick 3 years, what's the probability you got an average for snowfall?
Well, I can, as Bertrand would say, we don't have enough data points for real probability probably, but we had average for the last 3 years, 2017 to 2020. Well, not that's the last 3 years. The average snow from 2017 to 2020 was 367 inches. The average for the 2 years, 2018 to 2020, was 406 inches, and the 11-year average is 387 inches. So, around 400 inches is the probability, I guess.
Well, if you take 2017 through 2020, that would be 2 years with slightly above average usage and 1 year with substantially lower usage. So it'd end up at about 96% or so.
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah,
the 3 previous years would be slightly below average snowfall.
And what about just using 2 years, 2018 to 2020?
That would make it much worse. It would make it look more like drought, because you've got 103 and 92.
No, 2018 to 2020.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
That's 491 inches and 321 inches.
Yes, but it includes the resort closing early. I'm just looking
in March.
I'm just looking at power consumption. So 2018, 2019 was 104% of budget, and 2019, 2020 was 92% of budget.
I agree that the 3 previous COVID years are a better snow average than 2 + 1.
So yeah, so if we go in the next year, I mean, if it's a light snow year, then we've underweighted commercial, and if it's, it has to be a really heavy one to kind of get back.
Well, I'm not sure where we sit right now. I think there's a substantial disagreement here. So perhaps I could ask that we have a preliminary vote on this matter. I would like to know how many people could support the 3 years before the COVID years. That's 2017, 18, 18, 19, and 19, 20 is the basis for the EDU calculation. Who could support that?
I could support that. It's better balance for snow average, but it actually does not include the new normal that are going to happen this year compared to. So, but actually, I'm comfortable with both. I mean, there are pluses and minuses.
But you're not comfortable with the 5 years.
No, I'm not.
Okay, John, are you comfortable with either 3 years, or are you completely fixed on the 5 years?
I think it depends on what you want to overweight. And I think 5 years, like I said a minute ago, it blends pre-COVID, COVID, and post-COVID and smooths out the aberrations caused by snowfall and other factors. And so I think that is going to be the most accurate. And then delaying electrification, I think, is the cost of that decision.
Peter,
And
I'm sorry, John.
But I thought that was I would have probably put that as one of the lower priority. I mean, the biggest priority is what you stated, is we needed to cover the fixed rates and solve a financial problem.
Peter, do you have a thought?
Yeah, I would support the 3 pre-COVID years.
Bob? Bob, would you be able to support the 3 pre-COVID years?
If we do that, are we done, or is there yet more change after that?
Well, I think that's the last major thing. I had one other proposal, but not to change the ordinance at this point.
I could survive, yeah.
Okay. The other change that I was suggesting was not, I don't know what the change should be. I was suggesting that staff and finance committee look at the possibility, because the one thing that I don't think is fair, it's my own sense of fairness, is if a household, for whatever reason, substantially changes its use over some periods, consistently over some period of time, and I don't know what substantial means, and I don't know what period of time means, that they shouldn't carry around the weight of a high monthly cost when they're no longer burdening the system with their use. But it would have to be a sustained situation, and would have to be significant. And I don't know what those are. So my suggestion is that staff and the finance committee look at those possibilities. And yeah, Eric has just actually chatted with me. Do you mean develop an appeal process? Essentially, it's an exception process. I spoke with my wife, who many of you know is a land use attorney, city attorney, and she said almost every kind of ordinance has some clause in it that allows for exceptions. And so that's, I guess, what I'm suggesting is that under certain well-defined circumstances, there be an exception to someone having to carry around the burden of a high fixed rate when they're really not using anything, or not using it very much. So that was my other suggestion. But as far as the ordinance goes, I think where we are now, if people can accept the 3 years, the 3 previous COVID years, then and then the new construction would be subject to a 3-year averaging in, not 5 years averaging in. Then I think we're done.
What about the new homeowners? Not
new homeowners of existing homes?
Yes.
Yeah. It's just that, after the first year, it's their use for 3 years.
So 3 years, including their first 3 years. Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Eric, you earlier said October for something.
Oh, I was just suggesting that that we have a recommendation for this exception process ready for our October meeting.
Why October?
Because we have an election. I think that this board, I don't know what's going to happen in elections. I think this board started this board should finish it.
Well, we have other open items. That isn't the only one.
What are the other-
If new construction is all electric,
Oh yeah, that's
how did we
well,
compare that to a house that converts from propane to electric?
you know, that is an open item, and that's something the planning committee is going to be tackling and have a recommendation by the end of this fiscal, the new fiscal year, right?
Well, that to me, that's more likely to, well, I don't know what's more likely to happen. There are things that we don't have enough experience to know how to handle. And I don't think an appeals process, if we've taken the last 3 years as the average, somebody isn't going to be different immediately. And like I said, the biggest difference is the number of days of residency.
Right, right. And if somebody, say over a
What-
period of 2 or 3 years, cuts their days of residency by, 50 or 60 or 80%, that's what I'm talking about. I mean, it is days of residency. I don't
Right, well,
agree.
I-
And I was just throwing out October just because I thought this board, as it's comprised now, should finish this aspect of it. But if people thought that by the end of this fiscal year, that'd be fine by me too, because people aren't going to change their process that much. That'd be fine by me.
Okay.
Don't worry about the October piece.
Well, I still think there are other items that will have to be tackled by this board or future boards. This is not the end of the story. This ordinance, in my opinion, I don't think we should let people think that this is written in stone for 5-10 years. I think we need to improve on what's here.
That may well be.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is that I think this ordinance should have a well-defined exception process or appeals process. That's all I'm saying. And if
I agree.
And if people want to, noodle that through and work on it, and just say by the end of the fiscal year, along with the open item on new construction, if it's all electric, that's fine by me. I just think it belongs.
I agree with you.
Okay, I think that we're at a point where I think we're at a point where all the elements of this ordinance are set. Eric, do you believe so? Yes, 2017, 18, 18, 19, 19, 20.
That was my only question, just to make sure and define those 3 pre-COVID years. So 2017, 18, 2018, 19, and 2019, 20.
Yes.
Measured from April 1st to March
Through March
31st.
31st.
That's correct.
And that, if I understand.
When we talk about 3 years, we mean 3 years that end on a March 31st.
Yes.
We don't mean any 3-year pattern.
Right.
So on average, it would be 3.5 years.
So if that's the case, I would be more comfortable with 2 years for new ownership, because I don't see that start to be a long time for people to be able to make a big decision and big change in the energy sourcing.
Well, you would think new construction would be built to
Yeah.
what they want.
Yeah, I understand that. I'm talking about new ownership. So you are saying it's going to be 3+ year. I would prefer 2+ year, so people can make decision and not stuck for 3, almost 4 years in some situation, stuck with the old usage. I mean, not
Well, they're
being
not.
able to make change without impacting their base fee. Yeah, that's what it is.
Well, I think that, Bertrand, I think that one thing we talked about is, and maybe you could include this in your planning, but what we had talked about was, let's say a new owner comes in, it's an older house of some sort, or any kind of house or residence, and they decide to make big changes towards electricity. We had talked about that, for example, if they put in electric heat pumps, if heat pumps are found to be a good solution, if they decide to put in a heat pump, that somehow or other that electric usage would not be counted in their EDU. I mean, we talked about that. I don't know what the right solution
yes,
is.
no, we don't have a solution how to do that in a fair way yet. So I'm concerned about relying on that. And the system has flow, and we are putting band-aid on issues left and right. But maybe a better way is to rethink how we do that. But that's not the purpose of this discussion today. Yeah, I agree, and that's what we are going to work hard at planning and try to come back to the board in the spring, so we have actually a system by June 30th, 2022. But as you see, this is complex. And there are always unintended consequences to think of. So that's a goal. It's not yet achieved. So that's
Yes.
my concern. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, well, I think it's time to entertain recognizing that some people may want significant changes, and that's something that the board, whoever may comprise the board, can take up if they so desire. But like I said, I think that the primary purpose of this was to better align fixed costs and fixed revenue, variable cost and variable revenues. We've massaged that from the pure model to something less than the pure model for various reasons. We wanted to change people's annual costs of electricity as little as possible. Purpose of this was not to make big shifts from one kind of an entity to another kind of an entity. And then the third reason was to take advantage, to allow people to take advantage of a lower use rate so they could begin a shift from fossil fuels to non-fossil fuels. And in my mind, what's before us is a step in all those directions. And that's what we're trying to say right now. It doesn't mean that in 5 years, people aren't going to come up with a much better solution. But right now, I think this is the best solution under the circumstances that we have. So anyway, I'd like to entertain a motion to adopt. What's the ordinance?
Can you summarize the changes first?
Okay, well, as far as here are the main elements as I see it right now. We have a base rate of $119 per month per EDU, a usage rate of 22 cents per kilowatt hour. The EDU for existing homeowners is calculated based on 3-year average monthly usage, 2017, 18, 18, 19, 19, 20, where a year is defined as April 1st to March 31st. Right now, what we have here is that then a change in ownership would be influenced by the prior owner's EDU for year 1 only. And after that, it would become the new owner's usage, and that would average in over a period of 3 years.
So this would be deleted, Eric, correct? That's what you're proposing, yes?
Yes, it's supposed to be 3 years rather than 5 years. Most of
If it's okay with you, I'll just mark this up as we go, and then everybody can see it that way, and then if it's all good, then And this is the 3-year that we're talking about.
except it's 17 rather than 18 and 20 rather than 21.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good catch. Thank you.
Um, and that philosophy would flow through.
So, okay, so does that
Yeah.
capture everything that I think we've got consensus on?
Yeah, I'm not sure there's consensus, but I believe that catches everything that we've talked about. Yes,
Well, I'm always the optimist. Actually, that's not true.
close
So
enough.
consensus is not unanimity. Huh?
Yeah, no, it's not.
So that captures it correctly, Eric. I just want to
Yes, I believe so. I believe that does.
everybody else think that too, just so I'm doing it correctly. Because someone's got to make a motion on the amended ordinance. So
Yes.
that we have it up is helpful. Okay. Okay.
Why don't you look at the solar and make sure there isn't a 5-year in that or something, just in case.
Good point. Thank you, Bob. And is this going to be 2020 then?
Yeah.
Are you sure? Is everyone sure?
Let me see.
No,
Let me
it should be
see.
2021. That shouldn't change.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I just wanted.
No, that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see anything. I'm going to do this real fast though. There's only 2 times it occurs and we've caught them both.
Okay, good.
But thank you for the cautiousness. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'd just like to review where we've been because, we've gotten emails where people say it's confusing, and I understand why it might be confusing because things have changed over the period of months that we've discussed this. We've sent out 2 customer letters, and yet now
3.
with this 3-year, 3 customer letters, and yet with this change of which 3 years it's going to change again. I know it's confusing, but let me just reiterate that where we started was a pure matching of fixed costs and the base rate. So that we started out at $127 per EDU per month base rate and 13.7 cents use rate. That's where we started. The first change we made as a result of customer and board discussion was to add a penny to the 13.7 so we could buy 100% renewable in the form of renewable energy credits. So that became 127 and 14.7. Then we got new information as a result of going out and exploring the finance market for a wastewater treatment plant. And we came to realize that the electric department could not rely on as much property taxes, the vast majority of property taxes in the case of a bad year, as we have been doing in the past, as much as $650,000 or so. So we decided that we needed to add $270,000 of revenue to our electric rates, the ability to collect that amount at 6.8 million watt hours of sales. So then the debate was, what changes, the 127 base rate or the 14.7 use rate, or some combination? We landed on a combination of $119 base rate and 22-cent use rate. Some people think the 22 cents is too high. Some people think the 22 cents is too low. It's probably just right, 22 cents. So then the other discussions have been around, how do we calculate the average monthly use? And we started out 3 years, including the pandemic year. A lot of customer comment was we shouldn't include the pandemic year. Last time we said, well, we'll handle that by going with 5 years and dilute the impact of the pandemic year. Some of us at least think that runs contrary to the idea of allowing people to make a shift from fossil fuels to electric. So here we are now at 3 years, and the 3 previous years excluding the pandemic year. And finally, we started out with a 4-year period of a beneficial AMU calculation for our current 9 solar customers. We're now 10 years as a result of customer public comment. So that's what's happened. That's how it's changed. There's been one change because there was new information. All the other changes have come because of community and board comment and discussion, which I think is healthy. So I hope it's seen as that way, that it's the result of healthy discussion. It may not be the end all and be all, but I think it's a pretty good ending point for where we are right now. So anyway, at this point then, I would like to entertain a motion to approve the amended draft of ordinance number, what is it? Ordinance number 2102?
So are we adding also an exception, appeal, or whatever? In the
Oh,
ordinance?
what I want to do is have a separate motion on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll probably create a new ordinance, Eric. So that
No,
will
just-
come out of planning, I think. That'd probably be it would just be another ordinance.
Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Oh.
But what I want to do is establish that we intend to explore that. But
Yeah.
right now, so may I have a motion to approve the amended ordinance number 2102? Step right up, folks.
So who is
Okay.
Vandal?
Okay, I'm going to make a motion that we adopt ordinance number 21-02 as amended, as we've amended it today. Is there a second to that motion?
I can second that.
Okay,
With limitation, but I agree with what you say, Eric, that this is a step in the right direction. So I second.
may we have a roll call then, Peter?
Sure. Rickert,
Aye.
Epstein,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Yeah, I don't think the 3 or 5 years is enough to hold up the process to solve, the other higher priority items. So I'll say aye.
Perot,
Similarly, I still have some concern, but it's a step in the right direction, so I'm saying aye.
and Dornbrook, aye. It's unanimous.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Now, I would also like, I think maybe by motion, Eric, if that's okay with you, is to direct I'd like a motion, I would like to have a motion made to direct the planning committee to tackle 2 specific items. One is an exception process in case of substantial and sustained reduction in use. And the other is new construction that is all electric. And the third, I guess, would be changes to existing construction to make them,
Yeah.
to make it.
So yeah, I would not make it.
electric.
Yeah.
So,
I second that.
well, I'll make that motion that the planning committee come back within this this current fiscal year with proposals on how to handle those 3 things.
Well,
What was the
actually,
third? What was the third, Eric?
The third thing is existing homes that convert to electric heat.
no,
But
convert to electrical.
Yes.
but
Oh, that's already taken care of.
that's already taken care
I'm
of.
sorry. That's right. That's fixed. Sorry.
Okay.
We don't need that. So just new construction and the exception process. Okay, so I'll move that the planning committee tackle those 2 items and come back with a recommendation. by the end
So
of the fiscal
my
year.
understanding is the planning committee need to come back maybe 3 months before the end of the fiscal year to the board, so the board has time to act on it.
Absolutely, and the
Yeah,
finance
yeah.
committee will have to look at it and
Yeah.
determine its impacts, yes.
I second.
Okay, Rickert,
Aye.
Epstein,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Perot,
Aye.
Dornbrook, aye.
Howard, oh, you've got your hand up, Howard. Howard? You're on mute. There you go.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. There were a couple of things that I didn't address that you've all brought up, and I just wanted to say a couple of things. If we went to a peak demand based system, which is, like I say, the standard for industries across the entire country and probably across the world. One thing about electrification is somebody could put in an electric charger and just by charging their vehicle off peak. So typically peak hours would be at Kirkwood from 9 to 3 or 9 to 4 any day of the week during the ski season. And so somebody who wanted to put in any additional electrification, probably the most problematic one would be electric heat. But in terms of like converting electric vehicles, I look forward to the day when Vail Resorts is running a fleet of all electric groomers. And I look forward to the day when Kirkwood is running all electric snowmobiles. And the PUD is going to have to start electrifying its fleet. And so will any other commercial or residential user. Eventually, we're all going to be electrifying. So this is looking to the future. And the thing to do is to charge electric vehicles off peak.
Howard, we still have a long agenda to go. Is this something that's relevant to today's discussion right now?
Well, just this question about electrification was raised. So, and okay, I can just take this up at some future time.
Yeah, no, I understand I think we understand what you're saying, and you've written a good letter. So yeah, I appreciate your thoughts. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, I'd like to now go on to item 10, our agenda, which is our financials. Kelly?
Morning, everyone.
Hi, Kelly.
So we will start with the balance sheet on page, sorry, I wasn't there in my packet.
Page 76.
I got it
Thank
up
you.
on the screen, Cal. If you look at it, I'm sure.
Yeah, I have it on my computer, Eric. I can't really see my computer is small. I can't really see the, anyway, so starting with the balance sheet on page 76, you can see total operating through May 31st is up from budget by $1,073,000. Some of that has to do with the fact that we received our larger end of the year tax check from Alpine County in May, when we generally didn't receive it until June. And then also, the savings that we've had through the year. So good end to May there. Are there any questions on the balance sheet? Okay, moving on to the revenue account by fund. Still employee housing is at a negative, as well as solid waste, which we knew was going to happen. And you can see that in the G&A, parks and fire, the balance in there is $613,000. And again, that's due to the fact of receiving our large Alpine County tax check. Any questions on the revenue account by fund? Okay, moving on to the combined income statement on page 79. Operating revenues through May, we are down from plan by $298,000. Year-to-date total operating is actually up from plan by $354,000. Moving on to water on page 83 of your packet. Operating revenues for water are just above plan year-to-date by $1,100. Total operating for water is up from plan by $79,000. Moving on to wastewater on page 84. Operating revenues through May are down from plan by $87,000, and total operating is up from plan by $283,000. Moving on to electric on page 86 of your packet. You'll see there's an overage in cost of goods sold, and this is due to the retirement of our renewable energy credits for the previous 3 years, and that was $101,864. This previous retirements were not budgeted, but they are budgeted in the new and upcoming budget, which we will look at in just a few minutes. So total operating for electric is up from plan by $33,000. Moving on to propane on page 89 of your packet. Operating revenues through May are down from plan by $165,000. Total operating for propane is down from plan by $50,000, but they are still operating. They are not operating at a loss, even though they are down from plan.
So can you develop a bit here why we are so much down from plan?
Why are we so much down from plan in propane?
Yes.
Because of the revenues being down.
It's restaurants, I think, is
right.
That.
Commercial. Okay. Yeah. Okay, I can see that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's from commercial, so that's basically yeah.
Right. Okay. Moving on to solid waste. Operating revenues year to date are up from plan by $20,000, and obviously that's due to the mid-year change in the rate for solid waste. Total operating for solid waste, though, is down from plan by $41,000. Moving on to the income statement comparison on page 92. Again, just to note, compared to last year, commercial revenue is better than the year before by $93,000. But you see the biggest difference in residential revenue being $336,000 more than compared to last year. Any other questions on May financials? Okay, moving on to June preliminary income statement. These are actual revenues for June. So we end the year at 9.8 million, which is 308,000 less than plan. Again, you can see that base rate issue that we've discussed in previous board meetings. There will be obviously some changes to the property tax amounts when I get my final apportionment numbers. That number for property taxes will change based on what our final apportionments are.
Yeah, the other thing that I think to note is that about half of that shortfall is because of the propane.
Right.
And that's partially made up because we don't have to buy as much propane.
Okay, any
mean-
other questions or comments on June preliminary?
I have one. Yeah, I do have one. So I realize we don't have the final expenses in for June, but I really want to compliment Eric and staff. A year ago, we were looking at various disaster scenarios that might happen. We had a huge amount of unknown. And if you look at where we've ended up on this year with, so far $600,000 savings in operating expenses, the revenue worked out okay because people skied, which was totally beyond our control. But I really want to thank people for the efforts they put in to give us the best possible chance of making it through this year. I'm very appreciative.
Yeah, it's exactly what I was going to say. It's a terrific result for an uncertain year, and thank you to Eric and Kelly and the whole staff for.
Yeah, and it was a low snow year as well. So,
Well, yeah.
Well, what we learned is in COVID times, people wanted to be outdoors, even if there wasn't a lot of snow.
that's true.
We can write that down for the future.
So we're not going to say we need another COVID anyway.
No, I agree. Should we make that a motion?
Okay, moving on then to cash flow. We ended the year total operating cash at 3.182 million, which was $495,000 better than planned.
Can we get visual support? Voilà, thank you.
And so a good way to end the year going into next year. Any questions on cash flow?
No, it's just great.
Okay, we'll move on then to known budget variances. The only changes that were made to this were I updated solid waste and dumping fees and salaries and wages through May 31st. Snow removal salaries and wages. We did, it was a little less last month, but we did put some overages back into snow removal salaries and wages. But definitely not what we were seeing through the end of January or February. So we really reined that back in. And then I added also the rec retirements onto the known budget variances.
Can you actually develop a bit on that and why? What is that? What does that represent? This 101K?
It's the retirement of our renewable energy credits for the previous 3-year
people
period.
don't understand. People don't understand what's happening here. So I think it'd be good that we have some explanation on the process, so people understand why we have to pay 102K.
I don't know that. Brandy might have a better explanation for that. I don't know if Brandy wants to make a comment on that.
Sure. So as part of the renewable portfolio standard in California, we are required to offset a certain percentage of our retail sales, electric retail sales with renewables, and we do that through renewable energy credits. These costs so far are just the minimum requirement to meet our obligations, which are currently 33%. Those will be going up as part of the 100% push in this rate study.
So this is 3 years worth of renewable energy credits. And when you say they're, why is it called retirements?
And also, yeah. And
Because
why? Yeah.
Because that energy has now been used, right? So we can't reuse it.
Correct. So this, the retirements that happened this year, we purchased in bulk the majority of what was required to meet our obligations over the current compliance period, which ended at the end of 2020. So we purchased those in 2020. And by purchasing them, we simply took possession of the green attributes of renewable energy that was created and put into the California grid. By retiring them, We took them out of the market. We used them to meet our obligations, and
And
paid,
some,
and then
yeah. So basically, what we are saying is we have actually meet not only our obligation, but actually contribute to the tune of 102,000 to further green energy, actually. Yes or no?
the energy
So
was.
this is what we have not used for our requirement, correct?
I'm not sure that I understand the question. I'm sorry.
No, this is the retirement of our actual obligation.
So why in this case it show up as a variance? That's what I don't understand. It should
It's just it wasn't in the budget. We've been purchasing it all along, but it's only when we retire them do we take it as an expense.
okay.
That's just an accounting requirement that we take the cost at the time we retire it. Otherwise, see, we could have taken these RECs and sold them to somebody else. That's why they sit on the balance sheet until we retire them, and then they're an expense.
So my next question is, why do we do it in 3 years instead of every year?
We purchase them, but we retire them. You have to retire them at the end of the period.
Which is a state defined period. Is that right?
Yeah, there's 3-year compliance periods. And you have to do a certain percentage every year, but it's at the end of 3 years that you true up. It's just like on net metering, at the end of the year, you true up.
Yeah, but it's 3 years. Okay.
But it's 3 years, and there's a minimum we do every year.
It might be useful because I think people, there were some emails I saw that don't believe that RECs are really renewable. That it's not the same thing. And my understanding is it's exactly the same thing. It might be useful at a future meeting to have some sort of a diagram or explanation of how RECs work. I don't think it's really clear to people.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll consider that for a future meeting.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, something communication can work on.
Yeah. Okay. That was the end of finances, right?
That is the end. That's all I have for financials. Yes.
Thanks, Kelly. Are we ready to move on then to our budget?
And I'd like to ask how you would like to proceed with budget. How would you like me to?
I think we've gone over this a number of times. Maybe we should just ask the board members and the public for any questions that they might have.
So are there any change from the previous iterations?
The biggest change was obviously in the electric fund. So if you'd like to, we can take a look at that page. That's where I've implemented the new rate structure that was just adopted in our previous public hearing. And this budget does take into account the July month that we will be using the old rate structure, as the new rate structure per the ordinance does not go into effect until August 1st. So these numbers do reflect July being on the old rate structure. And so you can see, go ahead, Bob.
No, go ahead. Why don't you finish?
Oh, no, I was just going to say that you can see budgeted cost per for the rate budgeted is 22 cents, the base rate at 119, meter charge at 303, and the revenues obviously after that are based on the 5-year average on the for that last 5 years, and this budget does include all the actuals through June in the units sold. So the average of the last 5 years is what is budgeted in that 6.8 million in kilowatt sales.
I know the finance committee looked at the budget and so on.
Right. So we reviewed it. There's a couple of highlights I'd like to draw people's attention to. One is that because we have non-cash expenses in electricity, we accumulate cash. And because of the changes we've made, we accumulate cash at a rate that we can afford to pay off loans as they become due. We have some loans that are short term. I should explain that our loans cannot be paid off ahead of schedule unless there's a substantial drop in interest rates, and they're so low now, I can't imagine that. So we can never pay them off ahead of time, but we did ladder in some in the next 10 years to pay off. And at our current cash accumulation, we have cash sufficiently to cover anticipated capital expenses and be able to pay off and be able to have a decision to pay off. So in these, we assume that we are going to, over the 5-year period, that we'll be paying off a couple of the loans that become due. So I wanted to draw attention to that. The second thing is there's a fixed budget for renewables. And my assumption is that if there isn't enough budget to cover the renewables, that would be a board decision whether we do less than 100% or whether we raise rates to cover it, because that we can't predict the costs. They're already $1 higher per megawatt hour than what we had assumed originally. So my assumption is that would be a discussion topic and not a rate increase to cover that. And then lastly, on wastewater treatment plant, since we don't know the terms of the financing, we believe that the rate design is sufficient to cover the costs, but we won't really know that until we complete the financing. John, was there anything else on finance that you wanted to draw
Nothing to add
attention
on the
to?
budget, no.
I have a question. Why the GASB 68 and 75 expenses show up in electric, but I don't think that shows up in any other department?
I added that just because we were trying to get to what the actual costs were going to be for what we needed for our to meet our tier ratios. And so I added that line in just so we had a number so that we could somewhat anticipate what our GASB 68 and 75 expenses were going to be, so that we could figure out what we actually needed for property tax revenue.
And so, I mean, we don't actually know what those will be. We don't.
No, this is just what the average had been over the last few years, Eric. So that's why that number is just plugged at 65,000. But it was just so that we could make sure that given we had GASB 68 and 75 expenses, we were getting to the right number for what we needed for property tax revenue allocations.
And
right.
So also for electric, can you remind me when does the Western Area Power Association, WAPA, purchases begin?
2025.
2025. Okay, not 2023. Okay. And
yeah, so Eric, I requested. I'm sorry. I requested that every line item be on electric, so we could accurately budget for how much property tax we needed.
Yes. No, that makes sense.
So that's why there's all these additional lines.
Got it. I do have one more question on WAPA. What percentage of our demand will WAPA satisfy theoretically? Do we know?
I believe Brandy, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we were authorized for our normal full demand, wasn't it?
I believe it's 85% of our normal demand, but averaged over the course of the year. So in the summer, it would be all of our demand.
The reason I want to bring that up is I don't know if Larry Parker is still on the call, but he made an interesting point in his email about carbon free rather than renewable, and I just wanted to point out that we are in line for this is largely hydro, I think, and would probably be interesting to him to know that.
Yeah, it's large hydro. It's not renewable. It's not
right. Exactly
qualified as renewables. It's also dependent on favorable rains.
Right. Yes. Yes, I know. Okay. Thanks. Are there anything else?
I have a question on clarification. Equivalent fixture units goes from the 1100 about to 2,400, 2,500 in the future year.
Sorry,
Why?
that should say EDU. That shouldn't say equivalent fixture units. That should say EDU.
Thank you.
I'll fix that. Sorry about that.
Yeah. Mhm. So that makes sense since we changed the EDU measurement.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
So Eric, Finance has reviewed all this in detail, and we recommend approval at this meeting.
Thanks. You know, I have one other comment, just a general comment. I don't know where it would go in the budget or, and maybe, well, I was going to want to talk about this in personnel, and I've not talked to Eric about this at all. But I'm wondering if we are a little bit too lean on our staff. I mean, I'm just wondering if we should have one more person to be able to do things that we just don't seem to have time or a lot of time to do right now. I mean, someone, maybe one of our seasonal operators becomes a permanent employee to do miscellaneous work. And I don't know what impact that would have on the budget. I mean, it would be one additional person and so on. But I'm not sure how to handle that because I was going to talk about it at personnel, but that's later this month.
One thing I've been looking at, Eric, is getting an on-call contractor. That's what most utility cities do. They have a contractor with an on-call contract. So should big projects come up or things like that, instead of having to bid multiple little projects, you can use the on-call contract with them. So that's something I've been looking at, but it just has not risen above the level of priority of the electric rate study.
Well, the kind of thing I'm talking about is, you know, I'm thinking about rather is, yeah, I know that we don't have a chipper, for example, anymore. So we've got the green waste bins coming, but how do people get the waste to those bins? You know, if we had someone at you know, $20 an hour or something like that, who could handle that, I think that'd be a great service if it were in our budget. Same with, I know we terminated the seasonal workers for snow removal early, so we have the snow stakes up. Well, if we had somebody on board, that somebody could take care of something like that. And there are probably many other things that you know about that I have no idea, that just don't get done because we don't have enough personnel. There are more important things to take care of, higher priority things. So it's just something, but perhaps the contractor, a contract arrangement could handle those kinds of things.
And possibly, yeah, I'm loath to add a full-time employee for here and there, but it's the board's pleasure if they want to take
Well,
on.
perhaps.
I mean, right now, I will tell you that $20 an hour, we're not going to get anyone because unemployment's paying more than that, unfortunately.
Okay, got it. Okay. All right. Well, maybe it's something that
hiring's an issue. I'll just add this in since you brought it up. But you know, I've been sitting on a few Aqua and CMUA, various committees that have been coming forward, and I was just on the legislative one, and it was a big topic of discussion that no one's able to hire anyone right now at all. I mean, from the most ditch tender, lowest level, person all the way up to operators, and so no one's hiring at all right now. It's a really lean time. So maybe we can definitely look at it, whatever the board's pleasure is, but just be aware that getting someone might be the crux. And we do have a deficit right now. We have one person that resigned and took a job with Alpine County. So we'll be needing to talk about that at personnel as well.
Well, we'll discuss it at personnel then. I just wanted to get up.
I'd like to offer a comment that with a drastic change that we just made for the electrical, it is possible, it is my thinking that we may have increased electrical consumption next year that may generate some actually flexibility in being able to hire some people. I think the budget we see for the future year is going to be significantly revised next year based on the coming year, in my opinion.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anyone in the public who would like to comment on the budget? Are there any hands up?
Yeah, we'll see where we are in a year.
I'm not seeing anyone with their hand up. Eric, did you want me to go over the Stantec memo that was in the supplement?
Sure. Yeah, this has to do with the capital budget. It has to do with the cost for the wastewater treatment plant project, which will last over a period of 3 or 4 years. You want to go over that quickly, Eric?
Yeah, sure. I'll just go over it quickly. And the capital budget does reflect all these changes. But there is a couple other things to talk about briefly. So the original report was done in 2018 with an estimate of $4.3 million, and it's since been upgraded to 7.4. But a lot of things changed over that time. The midpoint of construction, for example, and including a contingency, and as well as they note here that engineers' estimates of probable costs are generally coming in, or right now coming in 20-25% low. So they made the adjustment for that as well. One thing I would say, and it is reflected in the capital budget, not reflected in this memo, this number does include the roof that we already constructed. But what this number underestimates, and what we have from Steeple, which we'll be talking about later, is about $300,000 in financing costs, or $330,000, which is basically the roof that's already been done, and the additional financing costs offset each other. So we're still looking at the 7.4, even though the roof's been done. So any questions on that?
I don't have a question on it. I really appreciate you getting this for us. My one comment is that I think we're going to have to manage things once we've got our financing in place to understand what our annual costs will be after the project, so that the rates that we've put in place, the rate increases and so on, will still work, rather than having to change that. I would hate to revise that upward again. So we may have to do some, depending how bids come in the end, we don't know. But there may have to be some pruning if necessary. Okay. So are any other board comments on the budget? We have the recommendation from finance. So I'd like to entertain a motion to adopt the FY 21-22 budget as presented.
This is Bob. I'd like to move that we adopt the budget and also recognize Kelly for the huge amount of effort to get this done on time.
Great. Is there a second to that?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, John seconds it. Peter, roll call.
Rickert,
Aye.
Epstein,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Perot,
Aye.
Dornbrook, aye.
Okay, great. We have a budget. Thank you.
Woo-hoo.
Woohoo. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you very much. Next item on our agenda is the wastewater treatment plant short-term financial consultant. And this is John. You're up.
Yeah, so, Eric just described the cost of the project. It's expected to most likely start in September, October this year. And it does require financing that's approximately $7.5 million. So the ad hoc committee to run the process is Eric Christensen, Standish O'Grady, and myself. And then this has been reviewed with the finance committee, and the finance committee has a recommendation. So I'll just summarize what the recommendation is, and then I'll go through the process that we went through to arrive at the recommendation. So we'd like to recommend retaining Stiefel as our placement agent. We'd like to first try to finance the $7.5 million through a private placement, basically a bank loan. If we don't get acceptable terms through that process, we would then consider doing a public bond offer. And so let me go through the background on all this and how we arrived at this. The long-term financing for the wastewater treatment plant refurbishing will be through an RUS loan, and that's been applied for and approvals anticipated in September of this year. But RUS won't provide those funds until the project is completed, and the project's expected to go for at least 3 years. And so we need to secure commercial financing to cover that 3 to 4 year period. And then that will be paid back with the proceeds of the RUS loan. So what we instructed the agents to look into is a final maturity date of November 2025 to allow for 1 year of potential delays to the project, but also allow us to call it earlier to reduce the cost of the financing. So the process we went through to do this was we have some history. In 2013, Standish and Bob Epstein were involved with raising $5.1 million of certificates of participation in a public bond offering. And as part of that, they worked with Stifel, and we're very happy with the performance of Stifel. And then our bond counsel was David Fama at a law firm called Jones Hall. And the experience with David was very positive as well. So we started the process going to David Fama because we really view him as someone who's going to help the district and give us good advice. And so we met with David, and his recommendation was to go with a private financing. And then he recommended a number of financial advisors that he thought would be appropriate for our type of financing. And so we went and interviewed 4 of these financial agents, the 3 that David Fama recommended, and then also one, I think, Eric, that you recommended, Ross Financial. And Eric Christensen gave a good write-up of the project, and we have the rate study completed already and the engineering report. We provided audited financials and such, so they had a good set of information to work on. After reviewing or interviewing each one of these firms, Ross seems like it was more appropriate for financings for larger entities than our district. So we boiled it down more to Stifel, Brandis Tallman, and Hilltop Securities. And I think all 3 of those could do a pretty good job for us. So we didn't see any of them as being incapable of doing this financing for us, but we did come away with the recommendation. We thought that Stifel was the best choice, and that was a unanimous decision. Some of the background on that, on why, is that why would we choose Stifel rather than Brandis Tallman or Hilltop? And part of it is that Stifel can do both the private placement and act as an underwriter. So it gives us a couple of advantages. Is we can go to the banks as a private placement, and if we don't get the terms we like, then we can take a second action and use the same firm to do a public bond offer. Secondly, we think Stifel would be a better representation for us to the banks, because the banks will understand that if they don't give us good terms, we have a fallback position to go to a public bond offer. We also have experience with Stifel. They also, I think, provided the best interview. In fact, they had tracked all our credit history and showed us reports on every transaction that we've done at the district. So they've got a lot of good visibility that impressed us. We also felt very good about Brandis Tallman, and Hilltop could have been acceptable as well. But I think those are the primary reasons why we felt like Stifel was the number one choice. The fees are roughly in the same range of, Hilltop was $22,000 and the most expensive was Ross at $40,000. So the fees are seen as, basically in market. Then the question about whether to do a private placement or a bond issue, when you look at the proposals from the finance agents, you'll see that their projections are a much higher cost of funds for a private placement. So you'd say, well, why would we take on that higher cost? And there's a few reasons for that. One is we feel very likely that we'll be able to do a loan where we can take down the loan as needed over the 3-year period. So when they did their projections, they compared the full $7.5 million for both a public offer and a private placement. For a public offer, you would have to raise the $7.5 million up front. For the private placement, we have a good opportunity where we can say, well, we want $7.5 million that we can take down over time. So the amount of money that we've borrowed over a period of time might be substantially lower and bring down those costs to be much more competitive with the public offer. So, the first reason is we think actually the estimates are potentially high from each one of these finance agents because they didn't take into account a takedown of the loan over time. Now, there is a caveat to that is until we see term sheets back from the lenders, we don't know if they'll increase the interest rate because it's a loan that you can take down over time versus an upfront borrowing of the full $7.5 million. So we'll see what happens through that process. The other reason is staff time. The amount of work to do a public bond offer is at least double what it is to do the private placement, and a longer time period as well to get the financing done. And, Eric can probably talk to this better than I can, but, we're in a budget process, an audit process follows the budget process. And it's a much more work to do the public bond offer, much more documentation has to be provided. And you have to go to a rating agency to get your bond rating, which isn't required for a private placement. So another reason to go private placement would be to be more mindful of staff time. And while staff time is kind of a sunk cost, there is opportunity cost of other things that we need the staff to do at the same time. And the last reason is flexibility. Is, like I said, with a private placement, we can put the maturity date out 4 years, but we can pay it off early without really any penalty. And it's much more difficult to have that sort of flexibility built into a public bond offer. So the 3 reasons, when you look at the cost comparison, you might say private placement looks too expensive. But number 1 reason is that cost very likely would come down if we can get a loan vehicle that we can take down over time. Second reason is the amount of staff time required to do public placement and the length of time it takes to do that. And the third is the flexibility. This is a short-term loan, 3 to 4 years. So it's not typical of a bond that you might issue that might be out there for a much longer time period. So that's our recommendation. I think it was a pretty good process. Like I said, I think all the finance agents could have done an acceptable job for us. They're all very encouraging. The market is pretty hungry for this type of transaction right now. And so we'd like to recommend going forward with Stiefel and going forward with the initial plan to do private placement with a backup if we don't like the terms of the private placement that come back from the lenders to do a public offer.
Great. Well, thanks, John. We appreciate that. Are there any questions from the public or the board on this recommendation?
May I add something to that, Eric?
Sure.
I just wanted to, it was in the supplemental packet, but for those that didn't read it, I just did want to share. This is the estimated drawdown or phase of construction. So what our drawdown would be. I've worked with our consultant and I think it bears some refining, but this was their very quick stab at it of how we could phase portions of the project. So just wanted to share that, and with the estimated costs associated with each of the various phases. So we could, we do have some work we could do this winter. And you'll notice that these are pretty impactful changes to the wastewater treatment plant, except for electrical. That's just fixing some boxes, but these are impactful. And we would start the bidding process in February with the anticipation of awarding, March 15th, which is towards the end of the ski season. So if something did go wrong, we'd be before the melt, but after the peak of ski season, but we'd still be able to get some work done. So that was a consideration in where we moved those winter projects.
So Eric, our first significant need for cash is sometime in spring of next year.
Yes. Yes. Realistically, we start paying, this is pretty small, quite frankly, in terms of cost. But yeah, really, this is when we, get the Tescos and the electrical contractors out. That's pretty substantive in those two alone. So yes, obviously we'll pay monthly, as we receive the contractor's progress payment requests. But correct, spring would be when we would start seeing those, the bulk of the 1.6 million coming in. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any hands up from the public?
I don't see.
I have a question that may be kind of silly, but is it still beneficial to use the Rust process? How much are we saving? A lot of money still, or can you explain that to me? It seems like this is redundant, like we're financing this twice. Would we be better off just foregoing Rust and just financing it directly ourselves?
Yeah, Eric, maybe you can respond to that because I wasn't on the board when we did the Russ.
Yeah, right now it looks like we'll be locked in at 1.75%, which is better than you can get on anything else we do.
Okay. So we're still saving.
The long-term ROI is significant.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
the variable interest rate that they were estimating would be over 2% or maybe 2.12%. So there's this interest rate savings.
So it's still worthwhile to do it this way.
Peter, but the thing you have to say, we want this to be a 30-year loan. And so we have a 3-year loan at a low interest rate, which we then pay off in full with Russ, which is then the 30-year loan or 35-year loan. So the reason we want Russ is for the long-term interest rate.
Okay.
So that's the reason why.
Okay.
Good question though, Peter. I appreciate your asking that. Good question.
Well, I have a question which is not exactly on the budget, but just to have a reminder. So the new storage tank, it's going to be built at a different location. Is that correct?
No, it's going to be built in the same location.
So there is no change. So no change in footprint.
No, there is going to be a slight change in footprint, but de minimis.
Yeah, and how do you function? It's just not a budget question again. If you have to tear something in place that we use and rebuild a new one, so how do you technically handle the transition?
That tank is mainly used when we have high I&I, so
okay,
it can be bypassed, quite frankly, in the summer. So that's why we would do that project in the summer. Yeah,
that's one of the reasons. You better build things in the summer.
Yeah, especially an outside thing. I don't think we'd be building a tank. But if you saw from the schedule, and I took it down already, but the schedule, the demolition, occurs first and then the tank follows. So the demolitions, if we get an early thaw like we did this year, we would have the demolition go ahead of that, and then it would follow immediately. But tank contractors are very, very busy right now. I don't know if anyone saw the one in Lemoore that blew up, but literally blew up a water tank. So they're very, very busy right now.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions on this? So I think we're looking for a motion to accept the subcommittee's recommendation to engage Stifel Nicholas for this financing.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep. Motion to approve.
Okay. John makes a motion. Is there a second to that motion?
This is Bob. I second.
Bob seconds the motion. Peter, roll call.
Rickard?
Aye.
Epstein?
Aye.
Schroeder?
Aye.
Perot?
Aye.
Dornbrook, aye.
Yeah, I want to thank the subcommittee. This was they went through this process pretty quickly with a sense of urgency, which I really appreciate. I want to thank Standish for his efforts, and John and Eric.
Yeah,
Thanks very much.
yeah, I have to second that. This was really made very easy. You know, I think Eric provided all the data very, very quickly and communicated it well. And then to be honest with you, I think between Standish and I, we probably raised $1 billion over the years or more. So it's it's a pretty well-known process.
Why don't you just give us 7 million of that billion?
Well, we didn't get to keep it.
Oh, okay. Well, okay. Okay, thank you, everybody. So let's move on to item D. I'm holding off on a break here in hopes we can get through the regular part of this meeting. Item D, performance reporting and aquifer levels.
Hi, everyone. Performance reporting for June is shown here. For electric, we showed an 18% unidentified system loss.
Can the visual be blown up one step, please? Thank you.
Which brings us to 12% for the year, which is what we were, what our goal was. Looking at propane, we did see a positive loss in June of 2%. We ended the year at a slight negative 2% loss, and that's due to changes in temperature and volume because of the gas to liquid transition that we see in propane. If we look over to water, as far as losses go, the month of June, we saw an unidentified loss of 10%, bringing us to 12% for the year, slightly under our goal of 15%. And then lastly, on losses for wastewater, and losses in wastewater, as you know, are I&I, unmetered water that gets into our system, not actual losses from the sewer system. We saw 49% in June, bringing us to 31% for the year. And this is significantly lower than we've seen in past years, both because it was a low snow year, there was very little melt, and also because we are on a multi-year improvement plan on our sewer system. So I do have a couple of notes on the aquifer levels, but before I move on, are there any questions on performance reporting for the year? Okay.
So last year for the wastewater treatment, what was our yearly loss? This year is 31, and you say it came down significantly from what?
It has. 1 second, I'll let you know that. So last year, our average was 65% in 16-17, 50% in 17-18 for the year. So we're at 31% now. So that's the lowest that I've seen. I've been tracking for the last 5 years. Then the 45% was the last year and the lowest of the last 4.
And so do you anticipate that with further work on the system that we should keep improving on that in the future year, or do you think we are going to plateau somewhere?
I mean, we will plateau somewhere, but
Yeah.
Yes, I think that there is additional improvements to be done as we finish our multi-year project here. But there will be a plateau, and we will still see changes depending on how much snow melt we see.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any inkling on where the plateau is going to be? 15, 20, 30? No, you don't have to. It's just wondering if you had any insight.
Now, one of the things we need to do is, just like we just did for water, the water modeling, and we're going to do for electric next year, is to model the distribution system. We need to model the collection system and identify where those losses are. I mean, for example, we're going to hopefully this summer replace a section from one manhole to another that has been a historic issue for us and has some offsets and is definitely a source of I&I. But without a complete cammering and identifying of leaks, it's a anyone's guess. What we're doing is getting the lowest hanging fruit at this point. So
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the goal would be to have a tight system, which is zero. Ultimately, that would be the goal. But I think, at the end of the 4 years, we're going to measure our progress and have a definitive idea of what the work we've done has accomplished. And then at that point, we should discuss, after the wastewater treatment plant's done, we should discuss doing a system modeling, an entire wastewater system model. But that would be 5 years down the road, I think.
Thank you. Anyway, we're on the right direction now, so thank you.
Okay, one last note on aquifer levels. So that is in your packet. You can see the average for well 4 aquifer is 155 feet for the month. The question was asked, where are we in terms of drought? The last time we had the drought requirements from the state, we set the stages, and the first stage in which action was required was at 120 feet. And that was the minimum requirement, which was, no water at restaurants unless you ask for it and that sort of thing. So we're well above that right now, but we're keeping a close eye on aquifer levels with an eye to possible drought restrictions if those are required by our system or required by the state.
Great, thank you. This number is comforting right now. The 162 is very comforting.
And that's all I have.
Thank you. And now we move on to item E, which is the board election.
So Jess put together this packet, as she does, every 2 years. She's laid out the process for getting your pulling the papers. You can start pulling them officially Monday. I did have a discussion with Supervisor Woodrow. Their office is going to be reopening on Monday. So someone can go to Mark LaVille and Jess will be getting copies of the documents from them as well. So we'll have them here as well.
So anyone who wants to declare a candidacy can give Jess a call, and I think we've talked, Eric, you and I have talked about it's fine to enter the building, just ring the bell. And
yeah, I was going to cover that in a GM report.
Okay. But it will be available at our offices.
Yes.
All the papers, correct. All the documents. Okay. Great, thanks. Are there any questions about the material about the election? Including nothing from the public?
I don't see any, Eric.
Okay. Thank you for including that information. Okay, we'll move on to item 11, General Manager's Report.
Just a few things to talk about, and you just touched on one of them. So the Cal OSHA, which is what we defer to on our COVID protocols to be compliant. We have implemented those. So basically employees can self-attest and on their vaccination status. We don't keep a record of it for HIPAA reasons. And so if people are self-attesting that they're fully vaccinated, they are able to go maskless indoors. If they're not self-attesting that they're fully vaccinated or refuse to answer, then they are still under the masking protocols as per Cal OSHA requirements. As I mentioned, Alpine County will be reopening on Monday, but their bathrooms are going to be remain closed to the public. So again, since we sit in Alpine County, we're following their protocol. So our office will be open. We have a Ring doorbell on the front door. So if someone needs to transact business in person, they can simply push the Ring doorbell and staff will come and let them into the building. The bathrooms will be closed to the public. And so we're reopening on Monday. And there'll be a notice on the door to explain this to everyone as they come. And the doorbell's right there. It's very obvious what to press.
And as this relates to the board and board meetings?
And as this relates to the board and board meetings, so I've not seen significant business that needs to be transacted in August since the rate study was adopted. So whether we have the meeting in August will be up to the board's decision. But I've already been working with staff to provide, since we're still under the governor's order until September, to provide hybrid, which is in person or Zoom, or a combination. Actually, it's a combination. So those that want to appear by Zoom are able to appear by Zoom, and those that want to be in person will be able to be here in person. It'll be open to the public, and we just, by them entering maskless, they're self-attesting that they're vaccinated, and that's what what we'll be putting up there as well. So we're hoping to have the equipment all set up so we can accomplish that. So the Zoom will be able to work. I think it's going to be pretty straightforward. I've been working with Drew on that quite a bit. So if there's an August meeting, that could be hybrid, and definitely September will be hybrid. And then depending if the current legislation, which legislation passes on Zoom, we may be able to continue hybrid, or in October we may have to go back to full in person with no Zoom option for the board, with the exception of the way it was done before, where you could post something on your door as long as there's 3 physically present. I think some board members have done that from some exotic locations. So, Bob, weren't you in India? So
I actually skipped that meeting.
Oh, okay. I just remember seeing the pictures of the electric. That's what I'm thinking of.
Yes,
but anyway,
okay.
So that option the Zoom will be available again if 3 board members are physically present, starting in October. So, and I think it's encouraged good public participation. So I would just recommend we continue with Zoom, at least for the public, in perpetuity, since we have the licensing. So.
Eric, Rachel also asked, will the community services building be available to others to use for meetings?
I will have to check with Doc Johnson on what they're doing with regards to that. I don't know the answer, but I don't know the answer to that. Maybe Terry could advise if they're letting the public use like the boardroom or non.
Yeah, they're having it wasn't Fish and Game Commission. There was a couple of meetings that they have had in the boardroom right now.
So then I guess the answer is yes, that we would do that as well. We would mirror Alpine County, so we can make that available.
Okay. Anything else under general manager's report?
Oh, yeah, sure. The only other thing is I will be moderating a CARB fleet rule discussion on behalf of ACO Region 3. It is open to the public. It's about $100 to attend, but it will be discussing about the electrification of municipalities, counties, cities, fleets that's coming down the pike. The CARB was supposed to have their initial draft out this month. They've now pushed it back to late summer, and with anticipation of the first meeting being summer 22 for CARB instead of this winter. So they've really pushed back the implementation time frame, but we're still looking for what they're going to set as their first draft of the rules.
Okay, good.
If anyone's interested in attending that, and I can send the link out, just send me an email.
Very good.
And that's all I had, Eric.
Okay, thank you. Operations report, Rick. Is that you, Rick?
Yes, it is. Good morning.
Good morning.
Every summer staff works hard to create a giant summer projects list to get things done as efficiently as possible. And this year with the new construction, it really has thrown a wrench in our normal operations. Contractors calling, wanting to tie into the systems and requiring additional USAs as well as site inspections. And then, in fact, we had the general manager out in the field yesterday looking at a project, trying to figure out how we're going to assist the homeowner with relocating and or mitigating a utility easement crossing. So with that said, I'll be working with Brandy next week to kind of revise and update the summer project schedule so we can stay on track for the balance of the summer. But that's certainly going to be a challenge for us. We're limited on staff, losing one of the operators for electric propane. So it'll be a challenge, but we'll do the best we can and get things done. As for fire department, unfortunately, I was unable to get 2 smaller personal protective equipment grants. I was denied on those 2, and I'm still waiting on a CAL FIRE 50/50 grant, as well as the 2 larger grants, one for the fire truck and also a safer grant that we're working with Amador County, or Amador Fire Protection District with that grant as well.
Was there a reason why the grants weren't provided?
Again, I think it's a lot to do with our population and the competitiveness of the grants that I applied for. If we were in a larger city, it might be more successful, but I'm not exactly sure. But they were respectively for $12,000, $15,000, and both of them were shut down. But I'll just keep trying, see what I can do to get them. And then finally, hats off to staff for being able to handle the challenges of the propane electric meter enclosure protection responses and or comments from the community and questions from the community on how to mitigate their individual meters. Brandy's been very good along with staff delivering a very consistent message and working with homeowners to help them through this process. But all the residents received their letters, and then the commercial letters went out last week. And so again, if anybody has questions about their individual properties, they can direct them to Brandy or myself, and we'll get you through the process. But that's the operations report, unless there's any questions from the board.
Okay. Thank you, Rick. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Standing committee reports, finance. Guess that's you, Joe, or Bob. I don't, whichever one.
Well, we've covered everything to the best of my knowledge.
Okay. Peter, operations.
I guess the only thing I would add is that it was a consensus of the committee to add an agenda item regarding a fuel reduction policy in the future, coming up with a practical method to address fuel reduction, whether it's buying a new chipper, whether it's an alternative to that leasing. But what we want to do is before next summer, come up with have a plan. I think we kind of got caught by surprise this spring, and given the continuing fire danger, I think we want to encourage people to do fuel reduction in whatever way is affordable and come up with some kind of a policy.
Good. Thanks, Peter. Planning, Bertrand?
So we have not met this month. One of the reasons is we have a conflict on timing. I mean, it was just the day before the board meeting, and with the volume and of work to be done to prepare for the board meeting, it was just becoming too much. Also, and I'm going to make a call for people to apply for the planning committee membership, because we lost several members this year due to their own time availability. And so currently we have only Patrick O'Donnell that is attending the meeting. Preston Roper has a personal situation that prevents him to attend. He's still a member, but he can't really help us at that time. Nate Wale has resigned. Tina has resigned. And who do I miss here? So anyway, I have only one person, and we have a lot of work to do this year. So I really need some new membership to this committee. Okay. I'd like to add that I don't know if it's okay, but personally, I would not have a problem if someone wants to double duty and be part of two different committees. I don't have a problem. I'd like to know what the other board members think of that.
Yeah, the policy is just one committee, but I mean, it's something we could definitely consider. I mean, particularly if somebody's got the time and interest.
Yeah. So last board meeting, we did not actually review what was discussed at the previous board, planning committee that we went through. And I'd like to quickly summarize. We have not made much decision. We are not at decision time. We are still looking at issues. So the issues we are looking at are EV charging, how to, should the PUD be involved in that process or not directly, but also how can the PUD help HOAs to basically bring the EV charging in the valley. So we are working on that, and that's definitively something that we are going to follow through in the coming months. Another item was how we were going to report our public good charge uses, and actually not public good charge uses, our progress on emissions, greenhouse gas emissions. And so the staff is going to work with CMUA to actually make this happen, so we meet our statutory obligations. Third topic was energy efficiency. So we've said that already through the electrical rate study. So we really basically have a deadline to come up with a system by June 2022. We also discussed briefly of so energy efficiency and how to use the money of public good charge. Nothing has been actually much advanced here, but this is also something we are going to work hard in the coming months, and we come back to the board. And then the last topic that was broached was about the Firewise community. With the wildfire situation in California, many people are actually having trouble with their insurance policies and end up having to basically subscribe to what's called the California Fair Plan. Which usually come at a higher cost. And one of the things, not usually, I mean, that's the only thing I've seen so far. And one thing that could help people to get better rate is indeed the fire rating of our fire department, but also if we go through the process of the Firewise community, people can get substantial reduction in their home insurance. So we have asked, we need basically some volunteer to help us going through that process. It's not a very complex process. It's totally doable. It does make sense to do it in a centralized fashion in the valley instead of having each HOA does their own. And so we are looking into that, and through the communication committee, we will ask for volunteers of the community to help us in that topic. And so we will follow that and come back to the board. That's all I can remember with everything that we went through, but maybe Eric has anything to add. Eric with a K.
No, I think you covered everything.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thanks. Communications, Bob?
We haven't met since the last meeting.
And personnel will meet this month. We have not met since the last meeting either. Okay. A nice update coming up. Temporary Advisory Committee reports, Summer Festival. Is that you, Eric, or Rick?
Going to be me.
Okay.
Wow, thank you to the community for stepping up again this year with the Kirkwood Summer Festival virtual. I'll emphasize that. The Summer Festival subcommittee team did countless hours and was able to not only provide a really good documentary on the fire department, which energized the fire department members. Last year, they were reluctant to talk on camera. This year, they just were very excited to be able to tell the community what they do and say thank you for the love of Kirkwood, which was the theme. of this year's event. We will recap the numbers probably next month, but we're really close to our $100,000 goal. As of last week, we were around $87,000, and with more donations trickling in. So I view this year's event as a huge success once again. And then also just the silent auction itself. I think our numbers for the silent auctions were about 30 or 40% more than last year. And again, we'll give you the solid numbers next time we meet. But thank you to the community for all that you do. And if anybody has silent auction items that they've purchased, we do have them at the office. Just get a hold of me or Jess, and we're happy to pass those on to you. So that's my report, unless there's any questions from the board.
Well, that's great, Rick. Thanks. Hey, Eric, I'd like to send a thank you note to, well, I know Ann and Beth and An, and I'm not sure who else was Cheryl still. So maybe you and I can work on that. A little thank you note.
Absolutely.
Personal thank you note to them. Okay, thanks. We go on to general discussion. Is there any item that the board members would like to bring up for future meetings?
I have one I'd like to add. I got an email from a friend of mine who used to be in the state legislature, and every year the state legislature approves funds for fire department for safety. And so in this year's budget, there's 30 different cities or special districts that got between 100,000 and $25 million directly out of the state budget for safety. So I don't know any reason why we couldn't apply as well. I'm just wondering, I think I sent you a copy of that email. I'm just wondering what people think of this.
Is there any reason not to? I mean,
no. I mean, the city of Huron got $4 million for an ambulance and facility. You know, the smallest one was $100,000. I mean, these are all different size things, and there's a state budget to do this.
Good.
so
And it isn't like the budget, although there's a preliminary budget, it's not approved until the trailer bills are done at the end of August.
So Eric and Rick, are you aware of it? I mean, I know you're aware of it now, but is this something that we can make an application for?
I don't think it's an application. I think it's what do they call it, Bob? The fluff that all the legislatures put in, the special perks they put in for their districts.
Yeah, you could. That's one way to describe it. We would just.
That's called a pork. Yeah, pork. It's the pork on all the bills. So we'd have to get our legislator to do it.
Either our state senator or our assembly member.
Yeah.
Is more than capable requesting this be put in.
Yeah, I'll reach out to Dana Jorgensen and see if Bigelow, and then I'll reach out to Dolly's staff and see if they have any interest in doing that for us. And if they don't, maybe Bob, I know you know legislators, maybe they could.
I know the chair
would be willing to go to bat for us.
I know the chair of the budget committee.
That might work. Okay, so Eric, you'll reach out then to our legislators and see what the possibilities are?
Yes.
That would be very nice. Thank you. And is there any reason to double up with one or both of the counties in this matter, or is it go it alone?
No.
Just go
No,
it alone.
you don't want to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go it alone. Okay.
Yeah, and we should at least get in line for next year.
Okay, I've got one item, and it's really a follow-up on the electric rate. It's I think we have yet another communications to go to customers. This is one of the reasons why I didn't want it effective until August 1st. So Eric and Bob, I'm happy to draft in communication for your review, just to let people know what our final decisions are here.
Yeah, I've itemized it for the next COMCOM meeting. So if you could do it prior to that, that would be great.
When is your next meeting?
A week from Monday.
Monday.
Yeah, the 19th.
Yeah.
I'll have it well before that. Well before that.
And the other thing is everybody's estimates will be slightly different.
Right. That's right. Okay.
I have one thing I'd like to mention in the general discussion. if it's a good time. Yep.
Sure, go
Yeah.
ahead.
So maybe I missed it, but I didn't hear anything about the playground. And I think there was actually a fantastic effort that was done by the staff to make it happen. And I think we should actually maybe update the community with what happened and thank the staff.
Yeah, I mean, I think Dave and Joe and probably others did a great job on that. It was really fun to see them working away and getting it up by the 4th of July. And then it was really fun to see all the kids there on the 4th and in subsequent days as well.
Yeah, so it's open and live. And I think I wanted to make sure that people know that.
Yeah, it'd be nice if that goes into a newsletter pretty quickly.
I have a question about, is there going to be an event around Labor Day this year, 10K race, all that?
No on the 5K, 10K, and we are hearing, and it's all rumor at this point, but that a event coordinator has been hired to do the chili event. So it's unclear that there will be any donations coming out of it. It just will be an event this year, but the profit going to the event coordinator, as I understand it. But that's off the record rumor I'm hearing from those in the know.
Okay.
I have a question about the playground. Are we going to provide a porta potty over that area, or is that a no?
No.
I hadn't planned on it.
Yeah.
I don't think we've provided one over there, and since I've been here.
We've kind of nixed that years ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Frank has an update on the, I think.
Frank's hand is up.
He might have an update on the chili. I'm asking you to unmute, Frank. If you could just click that, then you can talk.
Unmute. Hey guys. So can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. So we did, under direction from the KCA board, employ an events company. And the events company main person is Amanda Erskine. And the board has directed her to work with the community to run the chili cook-off. So the board was really clear that they want it to happen. But I would say, and it's kind of the reason why I'd like to just jump in, is that it will work with some help from Vail and from the KMPUD. And so the details of that, as Amanda will be the lead person. She's already spoken with and got a download from Cheryl, who's done a lot of work on this. And Cheryl's just in the background sending some spreadsheets and contacts. So our expectation is that the Labor Day weekend will include the chili cook-off.
Oh, that's great news, Frank.
Yep.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, at this point, we will go into closed session. What I'd like to do is take a 5-minute break. And Eric, can you just describe the closed session process again with Zoom, vis-a-vis Zoom?
Yeah, so everyone will, except for the board, will leave the meeting, and then at some point we'll reconvene it open in public. So if someone wants to come in, I don't know how long you're thinking, Eric, half an hour from now?
Yeah, no more than a half hour.
To report out. So people are welcome to come back in. You'll just sit in the waiting room. If you want to come back in.
Yeah. Okay. So this is a closed session for 2 topics. One is closed session regarding general manager annual performance review, merit and bonus, and the other one is closed session regarding annual employee merit increases. So it is now 10:40. Board members, can we be back at 10:45? And okay, and you'll wait. Let anybody into the waiting room, or
I let everybody that was in, which was Terry and Howard, but Howard's still joining, so I don't know if it's on his end or if he just forgot to log out originally.
And Terry says she's connecting to audio. I don't know. Oh, there she is. And there's Howard. Oops. Empty seat.
He's hiding behind his desk.
Yes.
I think you just forgot to log out, but we let them back in, so it's a public meeting. We did it right. All right.
Okay. So we had a closed session. In the closed session, Eric reviewed the overall merit increases for staff, and that turned out to be an average of 3.3%. We're very close to our budget amount. The board members also gave Eric his evaluations and review, and are happy to grant Eric a 4.12% increase in his salary and the discretionary $5,000 bonus for some very good work in a very difficult year. And we expressed appreciation to Eric for all of that. So thank you. And I think we can now adjourn this meeting.
Did we want to talk about August, Eric?
With regard to August, can we wait a week or so to see if any business comes up that needs to be transacted? I mean, we had 2 meetings in May, 2 meetings in June. Unless there are matters that we really need to look at in August, it might be nice to not have a meeting in August and have our next meeting in September. But why don't we just see what happens over the next week? Eric, you and I can talk. You and I may talk on Monday, but then a week from Monday, you and I can decide. Is that okay with everybody? Just hold it, hold the normal time, but we'll decide.
The default assumption is August meeting unlikely unless something comes up that requires attention.
I think that's right.
Is that what we should take away? Okay.
I think that's right. Okay. And I will get my draft communications, Bob, to you and to Eric, Communications Committee, for the electric rate.
Great.
Yeah, and we'll have to recalculate everything and check for variations and things.
Yeah, Bob.
Don't you have good practice at that now?
We do have a lot of practice. Bob, do you have time Monday sometime to talk so we can just?
Yeah, I was going to suggest if you're available on Monday, let's do that and go through the list, and I'll spend this weekend testing things.
Well, if you want to send me stuff this week, and I have my laptop at home, or I will once I leave here. And then I am wide open Monday. I have one call with Eric McKean from Stiefel, just to start going over contract and schedule and things for interim financing. But other than that, my Monday is wide open. So you just set the time for me.
Yeah, I have nothing scheduled on Monday. So yeah, you want to say 9 a.m.?
9 a.m. sounds good.
Is that good? Okay. We'll take it up from there.
So for the
Congratulations again on a great year.
Yep. Thank you.
Here.
For the communication issue, I know that the number I'm getting are wrong on off. I don't care too much about it because I'm sufficiently informed, so I'm not worrying about it. But if mine are not accurate, I'm wondering if there is actually discrepancies that may actually trigger people later. So I don't know if it's because
I don't understand. I don't understand the question. I'm sorry, Bertrand.
It's not a question. It's a statement. I'm saying that when I got the communication letter for my personal case, the numbers are not correct. Probably because I'm a solar. I mean, clearly you said that I'm paying something that I'm not paying so far. So I don't know. It's just not the reality what I get.
Well, maybe we'll send you the test run early because the solars are very unique and
yeah.
Bob has to manually 9 customers. So we can send that.
Yeah. Okay. So I didn't raise it because I was suspecting it's because of solar. I was suspecting that, but
we're happy to send you an early one. But yeah, solar was always the oddball, but I think I thought it was correct, but maybe it's the 10-year thing. I don't know. But Bob, we'll talk Monday and we'll send something out.
Okay.
I'm not sure what it is, but we'll take a look.
Okay.
And Bertrand, if you could email me and Bob and just tell me what you thought was wrong so we can look at that specific item.
I will.
Okay, thank you.
Bob, thanks. And I apologize for you having to be the point guy on this. But thank you for it. So much appreciated.
Okay, you're welcome.
Okay.
All right.
This meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Bertrand, can you start to talk about planning dates and times?